Hello, class. Welcome to our third lecture series in the Geography 164, our remote pilot um, drone operations class. And today what we're going to be doing is talking about airspace and something called LAANC, which I mentioned previously. And I'm actually going to turn this fan down behind me. It sounds like it's probably a little loud for you guys. Hold on one second. Okay. So hopefully that's not as distracting. Let's go ahead and start what we're talking about now. This is from Elliot as posted, Elliot 20 through 34. That's what we're working with here today, okay? So let me get this into presentation mode. Okay. So Elliot does a really good job of covering the airspace kind of overview. Each page has a little bit something different or something detailed about each one of these airspaces. So this overall graphic, let me do my best to try to explain what's going on here when we talk about airspace, okay? Your class A is 18,000 feet or above. We won't really refer to class A much in this course because, as Elliot describes, very unlikely that you're actually going to have a drone that can make it up to 18,000 feet in the first place. This is cruising altitude, when planes are, flying for multiple hours. You hear the pilots, get on the horn with you and say, we have now reached cruising altitude. You're free to get up and walk around the cabin, et cetera, et cetera. That's when you reach this kind of class A airspace. So planes are much, much higher above, and they have, they're not going to be landing anytime soon. Okay. That's what this class A is. So not particularly relevant to drones. Moving on, as we step down from A to the next one, B, and think of B as the author has described, B for busy, the busiest airports you can find. Okay, so that would be here. Okay, so the way this works is it's often referred to as an upside down wedding cake, which I find kind of odd to think about, but the way that I try to rationalize what's going on here is that the further away from the airport you are, okay, the higher up the airspace, let's say, designation is. Okay, the further away from the airport, the higher up the airspace. So like, for example, with B, right? So we have something like 10,000 feet AGL, above, which means above ground level. And then they kind of step down and they get into smaller and smaller radius from the airport as you get closer and closer to the airport. Really read that section in depth because there are some important things. And, this chapter kind of blends with the next one we'll talk about, which is about charts, as you'll see. And so there's a lot of kind of combination lesson of the two things there, which is why it's really important to understand or to really read through thoroughly what Elliot's presenting in the text there. But anyways, sometimes in some of the rings, as if we were looking at this from a straight down perspective, like we will look on the map, you've got these various rings. Well, the various rings are your different stacks of the cake, let's call it, okay? So like this ring here would be from a certain airspace to a certain airspace, a certain altitude to a certain altitude, okay? Then the next one down here in the middle, a certain altitude to a certain altitude, right? Notice that I haven't said down to the surface yet. So we haven't actually got to the surface of the, surface of the earth yet. But then there is this last one where it'll say whatever the altitude is, and then slash SFC, Sierra Frank Charlie, okay? And so that's the one we really need to pay attention to, because that's the airspace that is from the surface of from the ground up. Okay, from the ground up, and that would be the closest you are to the airport, how far away that radius is. Most Class B, you're looking at something like a 5 nautical mile radius, okay, from the surface of the Earth, and that's your Class B airspace, where it kind of begins, and then as you get higher, like I said, it expands out and expands out. So, I should have actually started this whole discussion with some very important designation between uncontrolled and controlled airspace. Anything that is a Class A, B, C, D, okay, and E as well. Those are all what are known as controlled airspace. So you can think of it, basically you go A through E, controlled airspace. There is no F, okay? Then we move on to G. G is what is known as uncontrolled airspace, okay? Uncontrolled, that's the drone pilot's best friend. Because in uncontrolled airspace, there's no additional approvals necessary to fly a drone. Essentially, it's a place where there's probably no airports close by, or there's no, as we'll see throughout the rest of this lecture, there's no stadiums or other military operations, other types of, things going on, which could be, let's call it a hazard, or, would be hazardous to fly a drone in this type of area. So Class G, uncontrolled. Everything else, let's just call it everything else, controlled, okay? So moving on to Class C, okay, C for Charlie, moderately busy airports. Now we're talking as the cake is actually getting a little bit smaller, okay? Our wedges are getting smaller, and but the same kind of principles apply. C and B, they're quite similar in the sense of what matters to a drone pilot. Just to be honest with you guys, okay? So let's see, moving, and again, the numbers as mentioned in Elliot's text about where is the kind of these various stacks, where do they begin and end? It's on the chart. It's on the chart, the map, what's called a sectional chart with the various rings, okay? So C will have various rings as well. And then D, smaller airports, 2,500 feet to the surface. Notice with D, there is no stack, okay? So it's the ground and then 2,500 feet above. That's all considered the Class D airspace for this particular airport, whichever one you're talking about, okay? And in that case, you have a four nautical mile radius to work with, okay? So you're not supposed to fly within a controlled airspace in Class D from the ground to 2,500 feet. Now, we all know that we can't fly over 400 feet anyways. But again, since it's from the surface up, that's what makes a difference here. Now, with all that being said, note that there's a little, I'm just seeing this now as I pulled this slide from somewhere else. Anytime you see this permission from air traffic control stuff, okay, and this is on me for leaving this in the slide. Anytime you see this kind of thing, basically disregard it, because this is older types of policy. You really aren't supposed to be contacting air traffic control towers to fly drones anymore. This is before the LAANC system came out a few years ago that we're going to talk about in more depth in this lecture. So as you might think, it's a courtesy, and I'll be frank, I've heard some places still, kind of take those phone calls. From my recommendation, my knowledge, and what I've what I know based on what the FAA recommendations are, you're not really supposed to do that anymore. So apologies for that. Kind of disregard that from your, from what you're seeing here. Another thing too, these might look like links, but these are not. I pulled these from screenshots from another author. and they don't work, by the way. But just FYI for anybody that's looking to, that thinks these are links that are going to work. Okay, so yeah, like I'm mentioning, Elliot does a really good job kind of breaking this stuff down. Whenever you see a solid line, as we're looking at this thing here, okay, this map, this is called a sectional chart. Okay, sectional chart. This map is, let's see, solid line would be higher class, dash lines lower class. So solid line for like the class B, the class C, and then dash lines for either way, whether it's blue. Well, actually, blue would be higher class, magenta would be lower class. So you're always going to see the airports either they're blue or kind of this magenta color, purple magenta color. Solid blue, you're looking at things like class B, solid magenta, class C, dashed blue, class D, dashed magenta, class E. That's how it kind of works, okay? And I know there's a lot to cover here with this chart stuff, and I'm really kind of treating this as two parts. So this is just kind of the overview of the airspace is what we're talking about. And then when we go over the charts, it's like I'm going to give you guys another week to work on the charts, because the charts is very in-depth, especially if you've never done this before. And even for me, still to this day, it's still intimidating to observe one of these things, but we'll get there together, okay? Don't feel like I'm skipping over the charts now, because we'll cover it. All right, a little bit of redundancy here, but you must fly under 400 feet, okay, above ground level. Or if flying at an altitude higher, stay within 400 feet of a structure. Yeah, that's kind of what we discussed already, right? Must not fly from a moving vehicle unless they're sparsely populated areas. You probably saw that as a quiz question. And let's see, must fly at or below 100 miles an hour. This looks like something silly, but I've actually seen these kind of signs around before. I think it was on Highway 50 going to Tahoe, and one of the pull-off places, I would have never even thought to look on my chart to see if this was a drone zone, no drone flight thing, kind of whatever, but yeah, there was a sign there. It said no drone zone. So I guess they didn't want people flying drones over the cliff, or flying drones and people chasing the drones as a danger, as a hazard. Makes sense. You see these things, they're kind of random at times, at least in what you might think. But anytime you're in the presence of, some type of areas like national parks, or even some type of local parks, it's a tricky discussion with local ordinance versus federal ordinance when it comes to airspace. But there are local ones that will attempt to say, hey, this is not allowed to fly drones in this area. Again, moving forward, as I'm discussing this, these specific bullet points, like a sensitive security airspace, or security sensitive airspace, could be something like, I don't know, artillery testing zone, or the Area 51. Who knows, right? Something where the government doesn't want you to check it out. Basically, don't fly over it is what they're trying to say. Temporary flight restrictions, or TFRs, those are things that, like let's say the president is flying, or the president is, visiting your town, and all of a sudden you look on your air map and the whole thing is red. Well, that's because it's a temporary flight restriction. There's no drones allowed to be flown near the president. That's basically what they're trying to say. So you'll see things like that. That's an example of a TFR. And a restricted or special use airspace. Again, there's a little bit of kind of similarities between the sensitive and restricted and special use. They do have designations on the charts via colors and dashes or indentions, that kind of thing. it's more visual that you'll see these type of things and kind of understand when we look at the charts. Okay, stadiums and sporting events, you could take those as a no-no. Okay, and even without fans, which I mean, okay, still makes sense, right? That it could be a danger to those that are in attendance, I guess the athletes and the other people. But originally, this whole idea about stadiums, sporting events, was for national security in terms of, think if you're sitting in a place with 100,000 people, drone flies over you, and maybe it has, sorry to say, maybe it has an explosive or some type of, I don't know, gas or something on it. Essentially when these kind of rules came out, that was one of the first things that the FAA said: no flying over stadiums, no flying over large sporting events whatsoever, right? So those are big no-nos. Wildfires is another big one. Yeah, as appropriate as the timing may be, and as helpful as you might think you're being by flying over a wildfire, that's something that the firefighters get very upset about, and the FAA gets very upset about if they find, and the local authorities find you are doing this kind of thing, because in a lot of situations, well, let's put it this way: any type of aerial vehicle flying over a fire, which is going to be happening constantly, especially like a large wildfire, like could be helicopters, could be the tankers with their flame retardant stuff coming out, whatever the air vehicle is. Those guys do not want to crash into a drone at all. Like, doesn't matter how big the thing is, they don't want to do that. So you can look it up on Google. There's tons of examples out there. Whether how many are true or not, I can't attest to that, but I'm sure there are some factual ones. In the case of authorities having to kind of down their plane temporarily because of a drone sighting over a wildfire. So it's something that really shouldn't be taken lightly, and it's a huge no-no when it comes to airspace restrictions. And then airports, these are kind of obvious. We mentioned those. I think airspace and airports go hand in hand, but we'll learn more about that momentarily. Well, here we go. Let's kind of get going with these. As we said, security sensitive airspace. The thing that will stand out with something like this is there will be a little notation here when it comes to a security sensitive airspace. Okay, so all UAS flights are prohibited here from the ground to 400 feet. Essentially, you're not supposed to fly your drone here at all. Okay, and these are in effect forever until they are lifted from the maps. But you'll notice what they look like on the maps because they just turn into like this dark red kind of blob somewhere on the map. Anyways, here's your TFR, okay? And these are things that are updated daily on some type of, on what's called a NOTAM, or Notice to Airman, as Elliot explains. These are daily reports, hourly reports about airspace changes, things going on, things to be aware of. And in the assignment that I'm going to give you guys momentarily, you'll notice that there is updates. You would receive updates like this if there was something happening in the area you wanted to fly. So detailed areas about the details about the restrictions, size, altitude, time period that is in effect. Again, these are temporary. So like I said, if the president's flying through, he's probably going to stay 1 or 2 days, something like that. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't mean that it's different than the other one. This is like a day or two in most cases types of limitations. So here's your restricted or special use airspace, like prohibited areas, restricted areas. There's, like I said, military type operations. You're not supposed to fly next to military bases at all. And any kind of controlled firing areas. Washington, D.C., the metropolitan, the actual city boundaries of the entire city are a restricted special use airspace. So that means nobody is supposed to be flying a drone, no matter what, within the city confines of Washington, D.C. Okay. It's a national security, there's national security concerns. Whether that's overly, overly restrictive or not, it's not up for us to decide, right? You got the White House, you got the um, all the museums and the Capitol building, right? So there's so many examples of places that you shouldn't be flying. Therefore, the FAA just says, hey, altogether, just don't even fly drones here at all. Okay, period. Like it would take it would take somebody much more powerful and more important than me to be able to get authorization to fly in Washington, D.C. Yeah, we talked about stadiums prohibited within a radius of 3 nautical miles. Name them: MLB, NFL. Go through the list, and you're supposed to be restricted. I've had a little bit of conflicting information over the last year. Okay, and Major League Baseball was the one that stood out, and still to this day, I'm not quite understand. I don't quite understand why that is the one outlier. But what I was told after, kind of taking this as a blanket rule is that Major League Baseball, you can fly as long as it's not within 24 hours. So basically like a 3-day window. If there's a game on a Wednesday, you're not supposed to fly Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Something like that, right? But otherwise, if it's like, say, in a Class G airspace, it's allowed. So, Major League Baseball is the one I would throw out there. And I only say that because I kind of got into an argument with a guy one time at a conference over this. And it turned out he was technically right. So if it was me, just like I said, looking at this overall, I would say stadiums in general and whatever the major league, sporting league it is, I would try to avoid something like that unless I had other types of special approval. Oh yeah, so here we go, right? We talked about this. It is illegal to fly a UAS around wildfires because you can interfere with the firefighting operation. So big time no. Okay. Let's see. So this is a link from the FAA to understand controlled airspaces a little bit more. This stuff gets kind of dense, so I'm trying to provide you guys with quite a bit of material and content to help you out here. And okay, let's move to the next section, or let's kind of move forward with this and say, okay, we talked about all this stuff about controlled airspace. Basically said you can't fly a drone in almost all these instances. But what if you're in one of those areas that's controlled, and is there any way possible to still be able to fly in these controlled airspaces? And the answer is, in some instances, there absolutely is the ability to still fly, right? You have to get what's known as a authorization, okay? You have to get authorization from the air traffic control. Or how do you get air traffic control? It's like the air traffic control giving you authorization. This new system takes away the need for an air traffic control person to answer your phone call and go, oh, you're so-and-so drone pilot? Sure, or don't do that, right? What the FAA has come up with is this system, and I talked about this before, called LAANC, okay, low altitude authorization and notification, okay? So this eliminates the need for having to call the ATC. That should not happen anymore. You should go through this LAANC process, okay? So you can watch this little video and learn more about that. Okay, so we talked about this, right? This is collaboration between the FAA and industry. I think the FAA realized that all of this drone operation, 99% of it wasn't going to be, that dangerous. But two, the flood of inquiries from drone pilots was essentially too much for, you know, their for them to handle. So they farmed a lot of it out to industry, and this allowed people that are, you know, have the capability and resources to develop software and apps and other, you know, essentially automated methods, automated technology to provide approval in these types of situations, in these types of controlled airspace situations. Okay. Um, so how does LAANC work? LAANC automates the application of the approval process from the airspace through an automated applications developed by blah, 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 by the FAA, okay? The requests are checked against multiple airspace data sources. So it will basically ping if there's any TFRs, if you're close to an airspace, whatever the controlled airspace may be. Maybe there's some other type of special situation going on. This is all integrated into the LAANC system. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out. It's still important to know these things, especially about the charts when you get to that section, because they're going to be on the test, okay? They will certainly be on the P107 exam. But this LAANC technology takes away a lot of that kind of manual legwork for the drone pilot, okay? If approved, pilots can receive their authorization in near real time. So I'll demonstrate that. Yeah, and so as I mentioned, so with the FAA and industry, these are just some of the, on the left side, companies that are coming out with some type of approval software. And really you want to look for, well, I guess almost all of them except for DJI and Harris Unify. Well, there's a few on there. Yeah, you know, the three main check marks, whatever that, you know, however they ended up getting there. I guess the FAA said these guys were the best from the get-go. So something like an AirMap, Kitty Hawk, UAS Sidekick I've never tried. Those are the, you know, those are the big players, AirMap and Kitty Hawk, I would say. Here's a video about LAANC, kind of just saying this is what it is. And that's it. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to get into this. I want you to get a LAANC approval to fly in controlled airspace. That's what your assignment for this week is, okay? So we're gonna use the app called AirMap, okay? And I call it an app because there is an app on your phone you could use, or you can just use your computer, like I'm gonna show you guys, and you can go on their website and just work through it like that. So let me do that now. Okay, switch these screens around, hold on one second. Okay, so if I type AirMap, just like that, AirMap, this is what I want you to do. Sure, airmap.com, okay. Now, let's go ahead and say plan a flight. By the way, the majority of this is free, so that's a nice thing for what we're doing here. The way they make their money is they use large enterprises that need to scale, say, dozens or hundreds of flights a day, a week, whatever it is. And it's so much airspace management that one guy can't really handle it for the company. And so that's what they kind of help people do for a fee. But we're just students trying to learn. So heck, we should get this stuff for free, right? And let's try that now. If I click on this plan a flight here, okay. Yeah, sure, I accept. And wants to know my location, I will say allow. Okay. And, okay, let me back out, because there should be a place where it has me log in. So this is kind of a neat thing, just looking at the initial piece here. It has us in the Los Angeles area, and whoa, lots of stuff going on in this map. But that's okay. I don't want us to get too bogged down with this stuff yet. I wanted to try to mention to you guys, see all these little paper airplane looking icons? Those are in real time. Somebody's flight out there that they have, got the approval for, or that they have submitted to AirMap. You don't have to be actually flying in controlled airspace to use AirMap. You can just do it kind of like as a courtesy to say, hey, here I am, and other drone pilots will know where you are, authorities as well. But anyways, so like, let's see, what's this guy here? This is, whoops, if I click on doing this in real time with you guys, live, as you're watching it, not live. Well, I don't know if I can click on that, guys. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Can I click on his flight? He's right next to the LA airport. That is something. Flight, start date, September 28th at 7 a.m. Huh, I'm not sure what's going on with that one. Does that one work? Let's see. I guess there's not much to this if you don't have an account that you pay for. That's okay. That doesn't really matter. That's not necessarily what we're here to do per se. Here's what I want you guys to do. You're going to click on this little button here. Okay, when you get in here, it's going to ask you to log in. So this is what you need to do first. You need to first create an account with AirMap. Do that, and then go to the email and confirm it. Okay, good. Now you're in business. I'm going to go ahead and use my existing account here that I've got, and I'll log in. Okay. And so what it's going to do, it'll bring up, and by the way, you could do this on the mobile as well. I don't care which way you want to do it. It's definitely a different interface, but some of the icons and the buttons look very much the same. So if you can kind of correlate what I'm doing on the PC to the app, that's fine as well, okay? All right, so it's got me zoomed into, I think, no, I don't know where this is. Let's see, zoom out here. Oh, it's got me in the same place as I just was, down in LA. So let's see. I want to go somewhere else. I guess there is no, maybe I just don't know how to use it yet. I was hoping there was a place where I could enter an address. Maybe not. Well, that's okay. Let's see, flight context. I'm gonna kind of zoom my mouse out here. I'm gonna go to like Northern California. Okay, so I'm just gonna drag around like this. And notice as my map here on the left side is moving, wherever I've got my little pointer on, I guess my little hand, it shows me like a 3D map version of that on this side. It's a little strange, frankly, as a person that does maps. I'm not incredibly happy about that, but I guess, these are software people that usually make this kind of stuff, not necessarily map people. Okay, so here's Northern California and the Bay Area, right? Kind of greater Bay Area, as you see here. Now, as you've read Elliot's book, Elliot's section, and you've gone over what we've talked about here, you'll notice that what we're looking at here between the blue and the purple kind of circles over the map and the red, these are anything that's inside of those highlighted areas, okay, one of these colorful areas, those are considered your controlled airspaces. So those are your well, not A, right? A is like cruising, like I said, but your B, C, D, E airspaces, okay? So everything else, right, is G. And you go, wow, that's mostly G. Well, if you think about it, where the populated areas are, where you might be able to even drive to fly a drone, where it might be of actual interest, if you're doing this as a job, many instances those aren't going to be in a G airspace. I'm just kind of throwing out my experience, but anyways, I'm just trying to kind of put this into perspective. A lot of the Bay Area, especially in the urban parts, are more controlled than not controlled. Okay, and then even kind of beyond that, like over here, Point Reyes National Seashore. This whole thing is this giant red, and it's like, what the heck is going on? Well, if I click on this, what's going on? I guess it doesn't just tell me. Oh, here we go. Okay, so whatever you click, well, no, it's just going to show on the map. See how I have this little red triangle here? Controlled airspace. Okay, 1. Let's see. Hawthorne Class D airspace. That's somewhere else. Let's see. I guess this isn't as dynamic as I thought it would be. Let me just put it this way. Anything that's red, you're going to notice that those are, here, let's try it now. Here's what I'll do. I'll try it, and I'll show you guys how to set up a flight, okay? So the idea is that you are setting up a flight, like this is your LAANC system. So you're going to set up a flight, and you're going to try to get automatic approval for flying in the controlled airspace, okay? So there's a few different ways to use these buttons on this side, and you can either do it like a circle, like a radius of where you're going to fly, or some kind of swath or line of where you're going to fly, or a polygon, or if you have like a file on Google or a GIS file or something, you can actually use this. But the simplest one is just to use the little circle. So if I do that, and then it's got my circle right there. It's not the best thing in the world. You can click and drag it, but if I do like this, or if I just click it somewhere else, no, I guess I have to click and drag the thing. Okay, well, that's fine. So as I have it there, now if I go to my advisories, aha, see now something new came up because I've got my proposed flight here within a red zone. And as I click my advisory, now I see something here with park, red, okay? Point Reyes, what does that mean? Well, it means sometimes, and this is why this is not the best stuff in the world. This is a national seashore, so it's a national park. National parks, regardless of how sparse or densely populated they may be, national parks are technically off limits for flying drones, okay? So let's see, I'm gonna close that, and I'm gonna try to go through the process. I wanna see what happens. Let's say, so basically what you do is to submit this flight plan, you have to walk through and you have to say how high you're gonna fly first off. Well, am I gonna fly 100? Am I gonna fly 400? Am I gonna fly 1,000? I mean, let's try to be reasonable and say we're gonna fly 200 feet, okay? And it's asking you when. You can actually pre-plan these, but we just leave it as default now. Sure, 15 minutes of flight. This is me, because it's got my account. Okay. What's this? Oh, what type of aircraft? Well, I have a DJI Phantom 4. I'll use that. Okay. And some other basic things. Is this flight occurring within visual line of sight? The most obvious best answer would be to provide a yes there. We know that that's an absolute rule, so we're going to say yes. Does it fly over? Does it account or occur over people? Well, no, it does not. We want to try to get approval for this. So what is the weight of the drone? This thing is about 2.5 pounds, okay? Again, I'm being kind of, arbitrary here by putting these things, but I'm just trying to show you what happens. So let's say brief the flight plan, okay? This is super cool. It gives you all this information about the weather. Let's see. Authorization requests, rules you are violating. Aha, here we go. So you kind of have to dig down for this stuff. Rules you're violating: do not fly over U.S. national parks. Okay. Rules you are following. Lots of them. Okay. So a lot of this stuff is kind of just overly redundant, but that's okay. I'll let you guys explore this in detail. I'm going to go ahead and say submit now and see what happens. Your flight is in conflict with the rules displayed. Do you still want to continue? Sure. Okay, your flight plan has been submitted to AirMap. No airspace authorizations have been requested on your behalf. What? So it's got me like I'm in the system, like I'm flying there, but it's not actually requesting any airspace for me. It's not actually going to request it because it's flat out telling me you can't fly in a national park. And so I'll say, okay. And well, it's again got me as an icon on this map over Point Reyes. Let me zoom out here. There we go. Oh boy, I zoomed out way too much. Okay, there's my flight, actually. My flight is happening here. This thing here, okay? That's me. So it will allow you to, I guess, enter something into the system, but it won't necessarily give you the authorization if it knows automatically it's not going to do that for you, okay? Cool. You know what I'll do also here, I'll say end flight, because I don't need that to just sit there and wait. Neat thing also, this stores a little record of what you got going on. Now, of interest here, and I'll show you this because I know you're thinking to yourself, well, what if I am near something and I can get I know that I can get authorization, but this air map is not giving it to me. Like what's I guess I'm putting this into too many words. What's the step beyond this automated authorization? Is there anything else I can do? Right? Is there any way possible that I can do this? Because it does say that I have said that you can get a special authorization or special waivers, and you can. And so that would be through the My Drone Zone. Remember, I showed you that, guys, from the previous lecture. I'll review that here in a second. I want to continue on with this because I want to show you a successful one and kind of give you an example of what I want you to do. Okay. So let's go over to Concord. And wow, notice that. There's a big old circle here. And guess what? Well, there's Buchanan Airfield right there, right? And anybody that's been to the DVC campus, if you look up and you listen, you'll notice that these planes actually get pretty close to the campus, right? So DVC is an example. And this is the best thing I like about this. Okay, let me get rid of that. Just in this kind of default mode, I can't really tell anything, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna say new flight again. Okay. Aha, and now it's got me right next to Buchanan Airfield. Zoom out. So this is what I really wanted to highlight to you guys, okay? Notice that these little squares here, these little quadrants exist, and they have little numbers next to them and little colors, right? Well, anything that's red and a 0 means that, sorry, Charlie, you're not allowed to fly here, right? This is absolutely controlled airspace that is too close to the airport or is close enough to the approach, takeoff, and landing position of the aircrafts that it's just not safe for you to fly. So like something like here, right next to the airport, I guess right next to the freeway, not allowed to fly there, okay? Let's see, is it gonna tell me anything? Controlled airspaces. All it says is Concord airspace authorization. Now, this is what I wanted to show you guys. If I scroll down here, okay, here's DVC, okay, right here. This is DVC. I know it's hard to tell, but this is DVC. This is College Park High School, okay? Notice that they're in two different quadrants, okay? DVC is technically a 0 zone, okay, 0 zone. Whereas over here at the high school, this is Viking Drive, right? The south side of the school, south side of the college. Here's the high school. If I say I want to fly right here at the high school or the middle school, let's do it. So if I click on this and let's just move my little cursor guy right there. You know, if I told us let's meet here at the high school. And so we've got this 50. I'm paying attention to that. If I put my altitude down to 50, okay, and I could just leave all this other stuff the same, you know, I'll put my aircraft Maybe I guess I don't have to do that. No, let's do it. There we go. Okay, everything else is the same. Oh, look at this. So because I'm about to get approval, it gives me a chance for a phone number. What happens if I change this to 100, for example? 175, what's going to happen? Well, it's still there. Okay. I'll put it back down to 50 because I want to show you guys what the automated thing looks like. Notice here, I guess this is cool about this right side map is that it's giving me the 3D perspective of the my flight. There's 200 feet. It's kind of an odd thing, but anyways. Shows you the general airspace you're going to be flying in, I guess, which is a good thing. Now, I guess you all know my phone number now. But yes, there is the, it will ask you that, and it's a good thing to have that there because then it will send you automated texts or, yeah, it'll send you automated text when you have got authorization or not. In this case, notice I have a green, so that's good. Again, because I'm adhering to, in this case, even though the controlled airspace of a Class D is 4 nautical miles, because I am adhering, this LAANC has broken things down to say, well, you don't have to, it doesn't necessarily have to be 4 nautical miles. Like in this case, you're far enough away. If you only go to 50 feet above ground level, that we think it's okay, right? And so that's what these kind of quadrants are there for. It's to give you authorization in this kind of situation. So now if I say submit flight plan, your flight plan has been submitted, okay. And actually, I don't know if you guys can see, but I just got a text. I know that's all backwards, but I just got a text from the FAA automated number thing. I'll read it to you, actually. It says automated FAA controlled airspace authorization accepted for flight number, blah, 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 confirmation. It also sent me an email. It says, please fly in accordance to the rules and regulations, etc. So there you go. There's your automated LAANC in controlled airspace. That's how that works. All right. Now, I'll end this now because I'm not doing anything. What I want you guys to do for the assignment is I want you to find somewhere. This is going to be a pretty simple one. I want you to find somewhere. Don't just do DVC, but find somewhere where it's in a controlled airspace. Okay. And find somewhere that you can get approval through this air map, system. Walk through getting the approval, and then take a screenshot of, I guess, the last screen I was just looking at. But take a screenshot of what you've done. Okay, so you have authorization in this airspace. I want to see a green, thing saying that you are authorized to fly here. That's what I want to see. Just send me that in a screenshot on the assignment that I posted on Canvas, and attach it as a little attachment, and that's how you get credit for this assignment. Okay, no quiz here. I'm actually switching it and just making this an assignment for you guys. So get into the system on AirMap, create an account, and kind of get rolling and get yourself a little bit familiar with this. Again, you could do it on a mobile if you want to instead of a computer. Either one, I don't care. But I want to see a screenshot for the assignment. The last thing I'll mention to you guys, and I just want to show this to reiterate what I was talking about. For the examples where you can't get automated LAANC approval, okay, you would go to the FAA drone zone, okay, and log in, okay. Now, this is where you take it to the next step and you ask for them to give you manual authorization, okay? So you would say here, create a P107 waiver authorization, right? If you have multiple things going on, multiple waivers in queue, you could say manage. But I'm not gonna walk through the whole thing. It's kind of boring, honestly, because it's a lot of stuff you have to fill out. But yeah, here's one where it's an example I was denied because I was trying to fly too close to Oakland Airport. I just wanted to see what happened. I mean, I'll show you again what happened, what it looks like. Airspace denied. Yeah, I guess there's not much else in there. Is there? Title. Oh, here you go. Denial letter. Oh, it's kind of cool. They send you a little denial letter. So they are looking at these things. They really are. They're looking at these things, and they're saying, "Well, what do you know? Is this going to be okay or not?" We were unable to approve your authorization over the Metropolitan International. The area is in a 0 altitude area of K Oak. Duh, I kind of knew that because I was on AirMap before. So I guess that I would have just already, I would have known. But look, I'm not saying you're always going to get approval or you're always not going to get approval. It's an interesting thing, right? We're in a situation at DVC being so close to Buchanan that we are trying to work through getting a blanket approval through them to fly next to, with a my proposal 200-foot above ground ceiling to fly on campus. So still a work in progress, but that's something that I can't get either LAANC automated or the drone zone, type of approval. So I have to work directly with the guys from that airport. So kind of work in progress. A little bit of a side note, neither here nor there for your assignment, but just showing you guys what this is kind of looks like when you get into this. Okay, that's all for, oops, stop sharing. So that's all for this week, and have fun with this assignment. It's an interactive chance to get involved and learn some things about airspace and what it's like to actually get out there and, try to fly a drone in places that sometimes you're allowed to fly in these places. Sometimes you're not. You might have to go a little bit further. You might not have to. But that's the idea of that's the goal of what we're doing with this section and this lesson. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.